Hi, everyone. My name is Terry Cook, and this is my story of my aortic dissections, where I am now, where I was, and where I hope to be. Back in 2011, we have to go kind of far back to 2011. It was the summer, July of 2011. It was a Saturday morning. I woke up and I wasn't feeling right. Something was wrong. I had this horrible, horrible pain in my back, kind of like the worst muscle spasm that you've ever had. And I just couldn't, no matter what I did, I couldn't get comfortable. And finally, I got to the point where I looked at my son, who was 7 years old at the time, and said, I need you to call 911. My husband was at a bowling tournament that morning. And I told my son, you need to call 911. And he was like, Mom, are you serious? And I said, yes, I was serious. He called 911 again, 7 years old, called 911, let the paramedics in. I explained my situation. He took them to the kitchen, showed them where my medicine was. He was amazing. And to that further, I ended up going to the emergency room, obviously, because we had the ambulance, went to the emergency room, and they discovered that I had something I had never heard of, an aortic dissection. They explained to me what it was, that it was a tear in my aorta. And being at that time I was 42, it was kind of surprising that it had happened because normally it happens in men in their 60s, not a female who's 42 years old. And they just sort of discovered that because of my high blood pressure, that's probably part of the cause. So for the week, I was in the hospital for 8 days, no surgery at that time. They wanted to, they monitored me with medication. And after those 8 days, I was sent home and I was told that I needed to go for genetic testing and find out exactly what the cause of this was. I ended up at Johns Hopkins Hospital, which we're very, very fortunate to have that in our backyard here in Maryland. Went to Johns Hopkins, did all the testing. They still found nothing. No Marfan's, no genetic disorders, no congenital disorders. They just kind of chalked it up to my high blood pressure. But the doctor at the time wanted to watch the watch the dissection to make sure that it did not form an aneurysm. So I was having MRAs with and without contrast from the summer of 2011 till March of 2012. March of 2012, they discovered that the dissection did cause an aneurysm. Of course, I didn't really know what that was either. No one in my family has ever had this type of issue. Didn't know what it was. The doctor, who was a vascular surgeon, explained it to me and said, you need to have surgery. This isn't emergency surgery. You can wait, but I don't want you to wait for too long. At the time, my husband was working crazy hours, so my brother was with me. And the doctor looked at me and said, why don't you come in on March 13th and we'll do the surgery on March 14th. I looked at my brother, who didn't realize it, and I looked at the doctor. I said, that's my 10th anniversary with my husband. I said, I don't know if I can do it that day, but I don't want to wait because I didn't want to have surgery on my 10th anniversary. Went home that afternoon, talked to my husband, and we both decided it was worth it to have it that day. It didn't matter that it was our 10th anniversary because we wanted a lot more anniversaries after that. So on March 14th of 2012, I went in to Hopkins. I had this stent put in. It was surgery, but it wasn't major surgery, but I was in the hospital for, I think, 3 to 4 days. I was in the ICU and I had to lay totally flat for probably 12 to 24 hours. And then I was sent to a room, and then I was in the room and I stayed there for, like I said, 3 days and finally came home. Again, the only thing I came home with was medication, and it was all my blood pressure medication. And I was to follow up with the vascular surgeon periodically. And of course, my primary care physician. I would go and see the vascular surgeon every 6 months. Once it got past the 6 months, then I think we went to 9 months, and then we went to 12 months. So that took us all the way into 2013. It got to the point those years further that as long as I was controlled by medication, he wanted my blood pressure to stay 140/90. If it got higher than that, I definitely needed to call my primary care physician. My pressure never went higher than 140/90. It got to the point this last time that he said, I can come back in 5 years. So I've been seeing him since I was 42. And like I said, I've got to the point of, I was, I think, 48, and he said, you can come back in 5 years. Fast forward to August 8th of 2021. And let me get back to that. From the time I had the stent put in until August of 2021. I had no issues whatsoever. I had started about a year and a half ago. I'd started going to the gym. I was working out 5 days a week, an hour to an hour and a half every day. I monitored what I ate. I monitored my blood pressure. I took my medicine as I was supposed to. I contacted my primary care physician as I was supposed to. My vascular surgeon, I would see him. I wasn't going to see him again until I think 2023, if the time was right. And everything was fine. July, and I'm sorry I'm jumping around, but I just have to get my story out so everyone knows. July, the end of July of 2021, which was just 6-7 months ago, I didn't like what my pressure was. My pressure was in like the high 130s over 80. It was like 130s over 70s, 130s over 80s. And I was like, something can't be right. I'm exercising 5 days a week. I've dropped some weight. I'm eating healthy. I'm taking all my medication. I don't know why my pressure is this high. Because as I started the exercise program, I saw my pressure dropping, which is what it's supposed to do. So I called my primary care physician at the time, and I talked to the nurse. The doctor, of course, was busy. I spoke with the nurse and I said, I don't like my blood pressure readings. I explained I was going to the gym, I lost weight, all of the right things that I was doing. I said, I don't know if she wants to see me, but I don't like my pressure. I think it's higher than it should be, and I'm exercising. There's no reason for it. The doctor happened to be there as I was ending my call with the nurse, and the nurse spoke with my primary care physician and said, she's fine. She doesn't need to come back until her next appointment. My next appointment was September 1st. What else was I going to do? The doctor didn't want to see me until my next appointment. She thought I was okay. I assumed I was okay as well. Fast forward to about 2 weeks later, August 8th, 2021. Again, we're only talking 6 months ago. It was a Sunday. My husband and my son were out of town for the weekend, and I was living life because no one was home. I had the entire house to myself. I could do what I want. And I went where I want. I did things such as clean the cars out. I cleaned the house. I went grocery shopping. I went to Sam's Club, which, Sam's Club, Costco, they're all the same. Brought all the stuff home. Now, we also live in a condo. So when you buy groceries, nobody ever carries just one bag at a time upstairs. So, of course, I'm coming from Sam's Club with those big packages, which I have bags that I put my big packages in, and carried all of that in. We live on the second floor. Carried all of that in, put it down on the kitchen floor, and this was about 2 o'clock Sunday afternoon, and I felt this pain radiating through my neck and up my ears. I didn't know what it was. I thought maybe it was just something muscular because I had gone to the gym Thursday. That Thursday, I'd also gone to the gym that Saturday. Thursday, for the very first time, I had lifted and did kettlebell swings and a deadlift with a kettlebell that I had never done before. I think it was like 40 kilograms maybe. So it was almost 80 pounds or a little more than 80 pounds. So I thought that's what that pain was from, that it was muscular. Again, it was around my neck and up my ears. And this was, like I said, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So I was like, all right, it's not going away. Let me take some Advil. No one ever told me. I've had blood pressure since I was 28 and I'm now 53. No one ever told me not to take ibuprofen when you have high blood pressure. So of course, I popped my 4 Advil like I always do whenever I have an ache, an ailment, or a headache, and I took a nap. I lay down for about an hour because I fell right asleep. And I was like, okay, well, hopefully when I wake up after taking the Advil, the pain will be gone. I woke up about an hour later, so it was about 4 o'clock that afternoon. The pain was still there. Again, around my neck, up my ears. Of course, I know now know that up my ears was my heart and all the blood flow rushing up to my ears. So I just sat there and I didn't do anything. And I started, like we all probably do, searching on the internet, Googling these symptoms to see what it was, because I was convinced it was muscular. Because I didn't have the back pain like I had back in 2011 when I had my type B dissection. I've never had, knock on wood, never had any problems for the 10 years. So I just thought it was muscular, researched everything. Okay, it's muscular. The pain just wouldn't go away. And it wasn't excruciating pain. It was just annoying. And the constant thunder in my ears was driving me crazy. So my husband and my son were on their way back from Rhode Island. So I, find my iPhone. I kind of looked to see where they were. Like I said, this was about 7:30 or 8 o'clock that night. And I saw that they were finally back into Maryland. They had come off the Jersey Turnpike. They were through Delaware. They were back into Maryland. So about 8 o'clock, I called my husband and I said, I don't want you to be concerned. I said, but something's not right. And I'm going to not to the emergency room. I'm going to the express care in our area because I have this pain. It just won't go away. I think it's muscular. I don't want you to be upset. I'll keep you posted. I know you guys will be home within an hour. So I went to express care. Caution, and hear this very well. Don't ever go to express care when you think something's wrong. Immediately go to the emergency room. But no, I went to express care. Went to express care, told the doctor what was going on. Of course, my blood pressure was, I can't even remember what my blood pressure was, but I told him I had this pain. He had no idea what it was. They did do a chest x-ray. He came back to me and he said, you need to go to the emergency room. There is something I see, and I don't even remember what it was or what he called it, but there was something that he saw in my chest that he didn't know what it was because, again, this was just an x-ray. I said, okay, a dissection was never in my mind anywhere. Never thought that's what it was. So I was like, he's like, we can get transportation for you if you want, or you can drive yourself. So like the stubborn woman that I am, I drove myself. But I knew from the time that I walked from the door to express care to my car, I was totally winded, and I should not have been winded because I go to the gym. So I knew something definitely wasn't right. So I took myself to the ER. Yes, took myself to the ER because I didn't want to leave a car. God forbid I do that. Took myself to the ER. Went into the ER. They asked what I was there for. Basically, I told them, I said, the urgent care saw something on my x-ray. I think it's my heart. Something's in my chest. I need to be looked at. So they did all the heart attack protocol, took the blood, did all the heart attack symptoms. So they knew I wasn't having a heart attack because I didn't have those symptoms. Again, to me, it was all muscular. And unfortunately, in this time of COVID, you sit and you wait, and you sit and you wait, and you sit and you wait, and they do not take you back until they're absolutely 100% ready for you. So by this time, it was probably close to midnight. I had been in the emergency room waiting area probably for close to 2 to 3 hours. And I was in constant contact with my husband. He and my son were home by that point, but of course he wasn't going to go to sleep until he knew what was wrong with me or knew that I was going to be okay. So about midnight, a doctor comes out from the emergency room and she says, Miss Cook, we're not ready to take you back yet, but I do want to go into this. There was like a little side room that we went into. I want to go in this room and get some of your history. I said, not a problem. And of course, the whole time, all those 3 hours, I'm sitting there 2 to 3 hours. I still have the neck pain. I have the pain going up my ears. My husband's calling me like, I can't believe they haven't taken you yet. What's the problem? You need to tell them that you're not feeling good. Again, no one ever thought, maybe my husband did at the time, but I didn't ever thought it was anything as far as an aortic dissection. So when the doctor came out to talk to me to get my history, we're in the small little room off the side of the emergency room. And she was talking, I was giving my history. She was checking my vitals. And at one point she bent down on the ground because she wanted to check my ankles and my feet to see if I had any swelling. Well, as soon as she went down on the ground to check my ankles, there went the back pain. I screamed at the top of my lungs because something happened at that moment. I guess at that moment is when my aorta tore. I don't even know what happened, but I was in the most excruciating pain like I was back in 2011. I knew something was wrong, but again, I did not think it was a dissection. Immediately at that point, they got a gurney. They started taking me back. I was screaming. I was in so much pain. I looked at the doctor. I said, am I going to die? Is this a heart attack? What's happening to me? Why is this happening to me? I need to call my husband. So they got me into a room. They got me undressed. They got all my vitals. They hooked me up to all the heart monitors and everything. And I also heard her say, as they were taking me back, the doctor said, whomever is in CAT scan, she needs to go first. So in hindsight, it's 2020. I have a feeling this doctor kind of knew what had happened because, as we all know, an aortic dissection is best found when you have a CT scan. So, like I said, they took me back to the emergency room. They got me fixed, got me ready, got the IVs in, got everything ready. I was able to call my husband. And luckily, we're only like 15 minutes away from the hospital. So my husband was right there. I think he got there before I went to CAT scan. So I went and got my CT scan. And again, now we're talking probably 1:30 in the morning. And my husband had not slept. He had just driven from Rhode Island, which is a long drive, especially through Connecticut and New York. And when I got back from the CAT scan with my chart nowadays, I got the test results before the doctor came in. So I'm on my phone, I'm looking at my husband, I'm reading the test results, and I said, Chuck, this is another aortic dissection. And we just both were stunned. We couldn't believe it. But at the time, I was stable. Thank God I was stable. The doctors and nurses took great care of me. They gave me all the medications. They gave me some medication that I really, really liked because I felt so much better. I didn't feel a thing. And my husband and I, like we said, we could not believe that it was another aortic dissection. I said, okay, that's fine. We'll deal with it. If I have to have another stent put in, I'll have another stent put in. I did not know when the doctor came back in that this dissection was worse. This dissection was at the root of the aorta. My other dissection, which again is a type B dissection, was in the descending aorta, or as Dr. Udelman says, the descending aorta. So this was not a stent. This was open heart surgery. I had no idea what open heart surgery was. I mean, I know of open heart surgery. I don't know anyone that's had it. So I started panicking. I was like, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to have open heart surgery. Can't we do it some other way? Can we just put a stent in? Why do I have to go through this now? I am only 52 years old. At that time, I was 52. I was only 52 years old. This should not be happening. No one in my family has this. So again, because of COVID, all of the hospitals are crowded. The doctor called every hospital within the Pennsylvania, Delaware, Washington, D.C., and Baltimore area. I wanted to go to Hopkins because that's where all my records are. That's where my vascular surgeon was that did my first dissection. Hopkins couldn't even take me. University of Maryland, because I was at a hospital that is not a heart hospital. There is a heart hospital that happens to be right next door to the hospital where I was. But again, who thought it was my heart or my aorta in this case? So about 2:00 in the morning, they finally found that I was able to go to University of Maryland, which I was very happy about because, again, we're fortunate enough to have Johns Hopkins, we're fortunate enough to have University of Maryland, and we have good hospitals in the county as well. So as soon as she said University of Maryland, I was like, okay, it's close. Thank goodness it's not Delaware. Thank goodness it's not Philadelphia. Thank goodness it wasn't Washington, because I probably would have been there alone because it wouldn't have been close enough for my husband to come. So they called transport, and probably by 3:00 in the morning, I was transported just by ambulance because I was stable. I did not need helicopter. I did not need shock trauma, thank goodness, because I was stable enough that I went by ambulance to University of Maryland. When I got to University of Maryland, they immediately put me into the pre-op area and did everything and anything possible that they could. They asked me questions. I verbally acknowledged everything. I again asked them, why do we have to do open heart surgery? I don't want to do open heart surgery because I was terrified. I was scared, terrible to say, but I was scared to death because I didn't know what was going to happen with open heart surgery. And then I thought, okay, well, it's just surgery. It's not a big deal. No, it is a big deal. Open heart surgery is a huge deal. And I wish I would have known that going into this. So they did everything they could. By the way, I did forget to say that my husband, I left and went to the University of Maryland. My husband left and went home because he was not allowed to go to University of Maryland with me. He was in the emergency room at Greater Baltimore, GBMC, Greater Baltimore Medical Center. So basically we had to say goodbye. And I said, Chuck, please don't cry, because I can't handle it. So he kind of held it in. I'm sure he busted out crying as soon as he got home. And then I was at University of Maryland. Again, they took me into pre-op. They did everything they were supposed to do, asked me every question. They put I forget what it is, the needles in both my wrist, because that's where you get the the best blood pressure. They put IVs in, they prepped me, they did everything, asked me every question you can think of, explained exactly what was going to happen to me, explained open heart surgery, got me ready, and probably within an hour, hour and a half, I was in the operating room. Again, they did the normal stuff, asked me if I was ready for this, and I knew the risks, and I knew that. And I didn't, how can I say this? I didn't, logically, I knew what would happen, but I think my mind didn't want to know what would happen. I don't think at that time my mind knew that I was going to go on a heart-lung bypass machine. I didn't think of anything. The only thing I kept saying, and I will probably start crying, the only thing I kept saying to the anesthesiologist, who was absolutely wonderful. Of course, at this time, I don't remember anybody's names, but she was holding my hand. And the only thing I had with me was my glasses. I had nothing but my glasses, no jewelry, no nothing, because my husband had taken everything. And she kept holding my hand and she kept trying to calm me down. And I just kept saying to her, I don't want to go see my mom. My mom passed away about 5 years ago. I said, I don't want to see my mom. I'm not ready to see my mother. And I just kept saying that over and over and over again. And she assured me, she goes, you are not going to see your mom. Everything's going to be fine. Just don't worry about it. Go to sleep. Have a nice nap. Excuse me. Have a nice nap. And, you'll be fine. You'll get through this. You're not going to see your mom. So that was kind of the last thing I remember, her taking my glasses. And where does she put them? She put them in my socks, the socks that they give you so that you have the traction, the footy socks. That's where she put them, so that at least that's where we knew my glasses would be, because like I said, that's the only thing I had at the hospital. So fast forward through the surgery, it was probably 6 to 8 hours. I have no idea how long it was. I know that my husband was sitting on the edge of our bed. He never went to sleep that night. He made all the phone calls he needed to make. He, of course, contacted my dad, contacted my best friend, contacted everyone he needed to contact. I also need to let you know that in December of 2020, my mother-in-law passed away. So here, poor Chuck had just lost his mother, afraid he was going to lose his wife, because we didn't, you don't know going into open heart surgery. And he was beside himself. Apparently the surgery went really well. They called Chuck probably, I think it was 6 to 8 hours. They called him and said that if there was a textbook case, I was the textbook case, that my surgery went perfectly. I had the graft in my aorta root. But that's all I know. Unfortunately, I don't know a lot. I was put into ICU, and I don't remember much after the surgery and ICU. I do remember my husband being there. And it was probably, I guess, 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. He was in the ICU. He was there when I woke up. And I thought ice chips were the best thing in the world. Because after they'd taken the tube out, I was so thirsty. My mouth was dry, and he just kept feeding me ice chips. I really couldn't say much. My hand still had the boards with the arterial leads or whatever they are. So I couldn't do anything. I didn't have my phone. I had nothing. But like I said, ice chips at that point were the best thing in the world. So he stayed for a little while. Like I said, that first day, I really don't remember much. I knew he was there. I think he left about 8 o'clock that evening. And I pretty much slept because it was ICU. I had just had surgery. The next morning, I was still in ICU. Funny, now I don't remember whether or not he came to ICU or not. He may have. And I was okay. I was doing well. I was alive. I understood the surgery. The nurses were fantastic. They even drew pictures on the wall of the board that they have, the whiteboard, of exactly what happened, where my aorta tore, what had happened. And then the next thing you know, it was about 12, maybe 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And in comes physical therapy. That was the last thing I wanted, because I was still in the ICU. But the next day, so August 9th, I had my surgery. August 10th, they actually made me get out of bed and walk. And it was this big walker, because I'm very short. I'm only 5'1", but it was a walker that was about chest height for me. They had a big oxygen tank on it so that it weighed it down, and it had wheels, and they made me walk the hall. And they just said, do as much as you can. And of course, here I am, knowing that I just made it through this. I'm alive. I want to do this. I walked as far as I could. I was very winded. I was very tired. I could not wait to get back into bed. And of course, after having open heart surgery, my chest hurt, my sternum hurt, everything hurt. But I knew I was alive, and I knew I was here to talk about it. and I knew that it could have really gone really, really bad. So I walked, and then he came back later that afternoon or that evening, and I walked again, told him I didn't like him, but I walked. And I think later that evening or even the next morning, I ended up going down to the cardiac step down unit. So we're only talking 2 days maybe, and I was down into the step down unit with the regular room by myself with the nurses. And they came in and checked on me. I was still not getting out of bed. But once physical therapy came in, they did make me get out of bed. I think, no, I didn't have a catheter. So some things are hard to remember, but the hospital, I can't say enough about the hospital, but I was out of the hospital. My surgery was on Monday. I was home by that Sunday. And they said because I had been exercising, I had been going to the gym 5 days a week, I had lost the weight, that my lower body was so strong enough that I was able to get up and down on my own. And I told them when, not physical therapy, but when the other people, the care people came in and said, all right, this is what you're going to need when you go home. I said, please, whatever you do, do not send me home with a walker. And they're like, why? And here's the funny part. Because I have an 18-year-old son, he already thinks I'm old. And if I come home with a walker, I'll be even older. So I said, please don't give me a walker. But I didn't need one. Thank God I didn't need one. I was walking through the hospital on my own. I was walking through the unit and around the circles, just holding onto the railing at the railing on the walls. So, I've heard stories that a lot of people have things a lot worse. Sometimes they're in a coma, they don't wake up, but I was very, very fortunate. I wanted to get better. I wanted to go home. I wanted to be out of the hospital. I hadn't seen my son. I didn't see my son from the Friday before until the Sunday I got home. Now that I think about it, it was 10 days since I had seen my son. I had talked to him when I was in the hospital and I FaceTimed him, but it's not the same. He's 18 and he may say he doesn't need his mother, but you know what? I needed him. So I was very happy to come home that Sunday. But again, I did not realize what open heart surgery was. My best friend who lives in Indianapolis, she's about 600 miles away, insisted on coming out. She drove that Sunday and came to my house and took care of me for the entire week. Of course, my husband and son were home, but sorry, men, sometimes you need a woman's touch. She was able to do my laundry. She took care of me. She made sure I ate. She's my best friend. We sat there, we talked, we laughed, we cried. I'm so thankful that she was there. I'm thankful that my son was home all the time. And my husband, unfortunately, had to work, but constantly called and checked on me. And that first week was not easy. I was not able to get up. If I got up, I had to get up really slow. I had to go to the bathroom very carefully. I was on constant watch because people didn't want me to fall. They wanted to make sure I was okay. I think I took a shower a couple of times that week, but I had a shower chair. I actually ordered a shower chair on Amazon, but they were afraid because, my husband didn't want me to fall. My son didn't want me to fall. Nobody wanted me to fall. So I was only allowed to take a shower when someone was home, just in case I fell. But with the chair, I was able to sit. So anytime you have that kind of surgery, you're going to need a shower chair and you're going to need help. And that's something that my best friend knew, but I did not know. How she knew, I have no idea. She basically knew what I needed before I needed it. So that was the first week I was home from the hospital, and that was August. And unfortunately, it stunk because I don't want to say I ruined, but the rest of our summer was gone. There was nothing else we could do. We couldn't go to the pool. We weren't able to go on vacation. I had to cancel 3 trips that I had planned from August until October. But again, who cares? It's just money. And yeah, I got airline credits, but you know what? I'm alive. I'm here. And those trips can be rescheduled. My life couldn't be rescheduled. The end of August, the month of August was very, very hard because I had this open heart surgery. And I actually went back to the hospital twice the end of August. The first time I went back to the hospital, my husband actually took me. Again, if you ever, God forbid, you ever have to go to the hospital, go by ambulance. If it's an emergency, don't wait. Call 911, go by ambulance. You get seen quicker. Most of the time, you get a little better care because you've got the paramedics right there. They know what to do. They know how to handle it. So the end of August, I had to go back to the hospital. Something was wrong. I knew something was wrong. And to be honest, my iWatch or my Apple Watch told me that I was an AFib. It was 2 or 3 times it said I was an AFib. I didn't know what AFib was, but I knew by looking at my blood pressure cuff that something wasn't right because my heart rate was really, really high. I was very lightheaded. I did not feel like myself. What, granted, nobody's going to feel like themselves, but I knew something was wrong. So the end of August, I think it was August 26th, I went back to the hospital. They saw I was an AFib. They tried to give me, I think they gave me cardizem to lower my heart rate. They ended up admitting me again. This was in, late in the evening. It was probably 10 or 11 o'clock. They gave me cardizem and a couple other things that I can't remember. And they ended up admitting me. And once I was admitted, I didn't sleep that night because, of course, I was worried. You're going to worry. You have open heart surgery. You had an aortic dissection. And the first thing you think is, what's wrong with me? Am I going to make it? Once they kind of got my AFib under control with the cardizem, I was taking cardizem via mouth. They had it via IV. They had a couple other things they were giving me because, my levels were just all messed up. My magnesium, I think they gave me, potassium they gave me a couple different things, but nothing was helping. My heart rate was still too high. The doctors came in and talked to me. And I think it was a physician's assistant, came in, explained everything to me, told me what was going on, told me why this was happening, that this is actually something kind of normal. It's not normal that 100% it's going to happen, but they said it is kind of normal after having open heart surgery that it's possible to go into AFib or aflutter. So I was there for that day, and that day I met my now cardiologist, Dr. Baker. She came in and talked to me, and she actually had an opening. It was on a Friday, and she actually had an opening at 1 o'clock that afternoon. Then they wanted to do it's a TEE where they go in and make sure that there's no blockages and there's no blood clot. They go through your esophagus, make sure everything is clear. So of course you're under anesthesia. And at the same time, once they figured out that everything was clear and it wasn't blocked, they were going to go in and do a cardiovert. And a cardiovert is where they restart your heart. Because again, I was in AFib. And I think at that time I was in aflutter too. Or first, I'm not sure how that works, but I had AFib, I had aflutter. We knew they had to restart my heart because I was not in sinus rhythm. So they did the TE. My esophagus was clear. There was no blockages. They could see through my heart. Nothing was there. And they did the cardiovert. But because I had just had open heart surgery earlier in the month, they had to do it a little differently than they normally they put, I think they put the electrode right on your chest, which they couldn't do because, I had just had surgery about 3 weeks or 4 weeks before that. So they put the patches somewhere else, on the side of my heart. And they did the cardiovert, but they had to do it twice. So they had to restart my heart twice because the first time it didn't take. And the second time it did, thanks to Dr. Baker, it took the second time. And I went back and I was later released that evening. So I was only in the hospital again for a day. So I came home on a Friday. That Sunday, same thing again. I was in AFib. My heart was racing. Something wasn't right. I was sweating. I wasn't feeling good. And I don't remember where my husband was, but nobody was home. But I knew, they were in town, but they weren't home. And I knew something was wrong. And I immediately at that point called 911. They came out, the ambulance, the paramedics, and let me tell you, they made my life so much easier because they were so funny. Even though it hurt, even though I knew something was wrong, they had me laughing the entire time. So they took me to the hospital. That Sunday, and I'll never forget it, was the BMW Golf Championship here in Maryland. And the hospital that everybody went to, or the hospital that I went to, was the same hospital they were taking everybody who was dehydrated or whatever, because it was so hot that day that they had the championship. People were drinking or they weren't drinking enough water. So needless to say, the emergency room and the ambulances, it was packed. So we get there and we go into the waiting room, into the, where the ambulance waiting room is. And because I was going in with chest problems, they took me immediately. Again, I went back there into the ER. They started with the cardizem. They wanted to get my heart rate down. And once they finally did that, I happened to be in the ER for the entire day. I was able to watch the championship on TV, but it was hard. It was a really hard day. There were so many times that I just sat there and cried because I have the heart. I mean, all of us have had the heart pillows, and I had my heart pillow with me because you have to put that on your chest after surgery. And I cried and I cried. And one of the nurse came in and she's like, "What is wrong with you? Why are you crying?" And I was just crying because I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to do it. I almost wanted to give up. I said, "I don't want to do this. It's too hard. I've been through this. This entire month has been, excuse my language, but hell. I don't want to do this. It's just time for me to go. I don't want to be here anymore." She talked me off the proverbial ledge, and I felt a little better. And later that evening, I was able to go home. So I called my husband, and they came and picked me up. When I got home, and remember, as I said before, we live in a condo. And I got home, and we have about 10 steps up to the condo door. And then we have about another 10 steps up to our condo on the second floor. Well, by the time I got to the front door of the condo building, I thought I was going to pass out. I really thought I was going to pass out or I was dying. I didn't know what was wrong with me. My husband, thank God, like I said, I'm only 5'1". My husband is 6'4", and I was pulling and holding onto his shirt, and he was holding me up. I don't know how he did it, but he was holding me up because I thought I was leaning against the wall of the condo because I thought I was going to die. I was like, something's wrong. I don't understand what's wrong. I'm going to faint. I'm going to pass out. I'm going to die. So come to find out, I was just dehydrated and hungry because my son was also with us. So he ran upstairs, got water, got me a protein bar, and I stood outside leaning against the door with my husband holding me up, eating this protein bar and drinking the water before I could even go any further into our condo. And like I said, it was hard as hell. I wanted to give up. I didn't want to do it anymore. I was like, the hell I was going through, and I was putting my husband through it, and I was putting my son through it. It's just not something I wanted to do anymore. I just wanted to give up. And then finally, what we found out was that when I was released from the hospital originally, back in the beginning of the beginning of August, I was put on the wrong medications. The way the discharge papers were written, I was not taking the correct, it wasn't written to take the correct medication for the correct amount of time. And because I didn't have that medication, I think it was, excuse me, I'm going to pronounce it wrong, but it was amiodarone or something like that. And apparently they pump you at the hospital with that. It's kind of called pumping. It's called loading. They load you with this at the hospital, and it's a normal thing that they do. But because they didn't quite load me enough, and then the discharge papers were incorrect, that particular medication was not in my system long enough to get me to where I needed to be. So immediately they figured that out. My cardiologist figured that out after she talked to my cardiac surgeon. They figured it out. And of course, I had several fights with the pharmacy because they couldn't understand why my medication for this particular medication kept changing. I finally got it, and probably within a week to 2 weeks after being on the correct medications, I was getting better. I finally started to feel that I was getting better. So now we're to the middle of September. They're back and forth with my medications, trying to figure them out. Went to my cardiac surgeon. He loved the way my scar was looking. He loved the CT scan at the time. Everything was perfect. He just changed up a couple of my medications too. They took me off metoprolol. They put me on losartan. I was also on spironolactone. I was on HCTZ. I was still taking the cardizem, but I was weaning off a lot of things. The other thing I was on was Eliquis, which is a blood thinner. But I was slowly weaning off of the Eliquis, the cardizem, the amiodarone, those things I was weaning off of so that I was just going to be taking my normal blood pressure medicine. And that was the middle of September after I saw my cardiac surgeon. He was fine. Then I saw my cardiologist after seeing her in the hospital. I saw her for the first time as a patient. And she was okay with everything. My blood pressure was okay. It wasn't great. They kind of chalked it up to everything that I've been through being at the doctor's office. But she was okay. She changed a few of my medications. I think she ended up putting me on losartan twice a day instead of once a day. So I was on 100 milligrams, or I'm sorry, 50 milligrams twice a day. And she also recommended cardiac rehab, which I had heard cardiac rehab when I was in the hospital, did not know what cardiac rehab was. Surgeon never mentioned it again after my 6-week pre-op, or I'm not, 6-week post-op. So I thought, well, maybe because I'm supposedly younger and I was going to the gym, I don't need cardiac rehab. My cardiologist wanted me to go to cardiac rehab. So I went for 12 weeks of cardiac rehab. The first several times I tried to go, my pressure was still too high because my cardiologist wanted my resting pressure to be 130/80. And I think my resting heart rate anywhere from 60 to 80. And of course, the first couple of times I tried to go to cardiac rehab, it was not the case. I ended up walking out of there crying. I was so upset. And the nurses there again at rehab were wonderful. They calmed me down. She says, I totally understand what you're going through. We've had another patient with the same issue. So I had to keep going back or calling my cardiologist or emailing her and say, I can't go to cardiac rehab. My pressure's too high. So it was probably 2 to 3 medication adjustments after that. Losartan, the it's called Coreg. I'm so bad with these names, but they put me on several different medications, and that was early October. By November, my pressure was where it was supposed to be. I was feeling better, and I started my cardiac rehab. I went to rehab 3 days a week from November until January. Back up to October, I hate to go back and forth, but I forgot. In October, I actually tried to go back to work full time. I went back to work after 8 weeks. Again, open heart surgery is not just surgery. It is major, major surgery. Again, I didn't know that. I didn't understand that. And being an independent woman, being someone that does everything for herself, asking for help, not working, not being able to clean my house, not being in my office, because I was even in my office through all of COVID. I was one of the few people that was there every day. It was killing me. I hated not being able to be myself. So I went back to work, but I went back to work way too early because you need a full 12 weeks. I tried to go back after 8 weeks. I was like, oh, it's fine. I have a desk job. It'll be fine. It wasn't fine. Even with the 20-some people in my office that are my babysitters, I was not ready to go back. So I ended up going home again. I stayed home for another 2.5 to 3 weeks. I did end up unfortunately, got sick with, normal sick stuff, not heart related or aortic dissection. And I ended up going back to work at the beginning of November. And I was full time, but I was at the office and at home some of the time. And especially on the days that I had cardiac rehab, I would stay home because it was just too much to leave cardiac rehab, get dressed, go to the office, and then come home again. It was just, at that point, it was just too much. So again, cardiac rehab, you would get on the treadmill. I got you on the bike, the stationary bikes. I got on what's called the New Step, but they did everything gradually. And the best thing about cardiac rehab, that even though I thought I didn't need it, you do need it because they monitor you. They take your blood pressure when you get there. They take your blood pressure while you're exercising. And they take your blood pressure after you're done exercising. Not only that, you're hooked up to a cardiac monitor, to a heart monitor. So they were able to monitor my heart rate the entire time. So they knew if I was doing too much and how my heart rate was reacting and how my blood pressure was reacting. And each day got better. And probably the beginning or the end of December, like around Christmas, New Year's, I asked them, can I go back to the gym? Because I loved the gym. I loved going. I love where I go. I wanted to get back to some type of normalcy, whatever that may be, after open heart surgery. And they said, yes, you could go back 1 day a week. So the days that I wasn't at cardiac rehab, I was going to cardiac rehab Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So on Tuesdays, I tried to go to the gym, but I was only allowed to do what I did at cardiac rehab, which was all cardio stuff, no interval training, no weights or anything like that. And let me tell you how happy I was. The people at the gym were happy. They don't realize how happy I was. Just going back to a little bit of normal stuff was fantastic. That was, again, like I said, January 31st. I actually graduated cardiac rehab, and it was a very happy day. They even played the Rocky theme music. So it was kind of like a fun little graduation. So I graduated cardiac rehab, and you were just there for an hour a day. But being monitored just put your mind at so much, your mind at so much ease that it was a good thing, because you knew people were there watching. That God forbid if something happened. First of all, I was in the hospital, and second of all, there were nurses there that could help me if something went wrong. They were also there to talk to me. They were also there to answer all of my questions. They were there just to be my friend at that point. So January 31st, I graduated cardiac rehab. I also had the same day an appointment with my cardiologist. My cardiologist was ecstatic. She loved my pressure. My pressure was down all the time. My heart rate was where it was supposed to be. My medications are exactly where they are supposed to be. The spironolactone, losartan, the Coreg. I take a baby aspirin every day. Of course, I take a multivitamin. I think that, oh, and then of course I've always taken Wellbutrin and Lexapro, but that was even before all of this. And thank goodness I had those medications, because I don't know that I would have been as what's the word, as positive as I was, because this was such a hard experience, and the depression is real. There were many nights that I cried. And I think if I wasn't already on the depression and antidepressant medication, I probably would have cried a lot more. So back to work full time. So fast forward to now, I am back to the gym 5 days a week. I am only doing cardio. I am not ever, per my cardiologist, ever allowed to do my team training. I was very, very sad, but I think deep down inside, I knew it, that I can't do the interval training, but I can still do my semi-private training because they gear that towards me. But I am on the treadmill for at least a half an hour. I'm on the stair stepper. I'm on the elliptical. I'm on the bikes. I do the private training. I've been lifting 5-pound weights. I don't want to go any more than 20. Just even though we could do 50, I just want to keep it at 20 for my sanity. But I feel like this is what my life is going to be now. I have to watch my diet constantly. I do have to say one good part of the surgery was that I did lose quite a few pounds. Not the way you want to do it at all. But I want to say I'm back to what my life is going to be. And as soon as I tell people that I had this open heart surgery, I said, but it doesn't matter. All the suffering that I did, I'm here to talk about it. And if I can help one person, then my job is done. And now I'm part of Aortic Hope. I'm on the board of Aortic Hope. It is the best thing I ever found. I've tried to push it to everybody that I know. And it's been for such a horrible experience. First, in 2011, I had a type B dissection. Now I have a type A dissection where I actually had to have open heart surgery. For a horrible experience, I'm turning it totally around to the positive. And again, if I can help one person to understand this, to stop smoking, to lose weight, to exercise, to take their medication regularly, I've done my job. All the suffering that I had was for nothing, or was for everything, to get this word out, to get the word out, to get people to understand, to get people to get checked. I am going to see my vascular surgeon tomorrow, as a matter of fact, because I told him what had happened. So I'm going to see him tomorrow. I'm going to see a rheumatologist because my mother had rheumatoid arthritis, which is inflammatory. Aortic dissections can be inflammatory as well. So we're going to see what happens. At least I get to know, or if there's anything happening, at least I'll have it ahead of time, and I'll know, and I'll be able, because I don't want to suffer like my mom did. And then I do see my cardiac surgeon, which will be my 6-month follow-up. And of course, my primary care physician, and I do have a new primary care physician, is absolutely wonderful and follows up with everything, calls me, checks on me, constantly looks up my records to see, if I've had tests done. And, if it wasn't for this horrible, horrible thing happening, I don't think I would be in the great place that I am right now. I keep telling my son the reason I'm still here and the reason that I'm going to live for a long, long time is to bug him for the rest of his life. And he just laughs, but then he's also very happy. My husband as well. We will celebrate 20 years next month. And I don't think I could have done it without them, without my family, without my friends, and without Aortic Hope. Thank goodness I found Aortic Hope. I found Karen Anderson through a friend of Karen's. And as soon as this person knew that I had another dissection, she said, you need to reach out to Karen. And just like that, Karen and I hit it off. And I started with Aortic Hope, and I love the messages. I love everything that it does. And I'm glad to be a part of this. It was a horrible way to be a part of this, but I'm glad to be a part of this. And if there's just a few things I can end with is constantly go to your doctor. You know yourself best. When I called my primary care physician at the time and said I didn't like my pressure, I had a feeling something was going on and we just didn't know it. I'm not blaming them whatsoever. This could have still happened, but I may have been able to catch it a little bit sooner. Who knows? But take your medication, constantly follow up with your doctors, eat right, stop smoking if you still smoke, and just know your body and reach out to friends, family, and anyone else where you can find help. That is my story. I am so happy to share it. If you have any questions, please message me or message Aortic Hope. I'll be happy to help you. But thank you. Thanks. I'm so glad I'm here, and thank you for listening to my story.